How's it going, my spuds? It's your potato wizard here, and I gotta make some content. I'm not gonna lie. So, what we're gonna do is I'm going to rank every school from greatest to least using Tiermaker. So, in all seriousness, if you really wanted the fast way of explaining every school's ability to be good, I would probably rank it a little something like this. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So, in actuality, I'm gonna rank every single one of these based on my experience and my beliefs in the game right now. So, this is going to be completely comprehensive. It's going to be overall perspective, right? It's not going to be just about the very end of the game. It's going to be universally throughout the entirety of Wiz what has been the best schools. I'm going to disregard what the level is on the Wizard. I'm going to say, like, universally, what is the best schools, right? We're going to start with the Life School. The Life School is my main school. It's personally my favorite according to my bias, but I'm going to take it from an outside perspective, right? The Life School is a supporting school, which means that if you do not like to play support, I would not recommend playing the Life School. They're meant to be the healers. That is their job. Like, hands down, King Zal said, the healing school is the Life School, and no other school heals like Life, right? And that's great. That's what makes the Life School a necessity in the game, because whenever other wizards are dying, when any of these other six schools need help, they go to the Life School. A Life Wizard is an essential in almost any main boss dungeon, regardless of whether they're a hitter. They're almost always needed because they are the supporter. They do a really good job at being able to help keep their team alive and support their team and give them buffs or whatever else that they need. They're able to do it with no consequence too. So that's what makes the Life School great. Unfortunately, it was also made clear by King Zhao in the beginning of the game that they were not meant to be hitters. They're naturally the weakest. Even in regards to gear, even if they were to run 100% critical with the maximum amount of damage, Life School is by far the lowest in that ability. If you want 100% critical, Life has to sacrifice a lot of damage. Because of that, they're not superior. However, I will say that you see a lot of Life Wizards at any level doing PvP, and they're also really good at doing whatever they want by the time that they're max level. They're pretty dang good. They are definitely the Life School is definitely the good at everything school. They're good at tanking stuff. They're good at healing. They're pretty good at dealing damage when they want to. They're good at doing just about everything. So I would put Life in the A tier. Next, we're going to talk about the Storm School. The Storm School is like the opposite of the Life School. If Life is a supporting school, Storm is the hitting school. They are very good at dealing damage. They have the highest amount of damage per pip based on the cards and spells that they have in the game. They are superior in damage. They're superior in critical. They are made to be hitters. Kingzon made it pretty clear about that. However, they aren't necessarily good at PvP. The reason for that being is because they have a low amount of health. And when you have a low amount of health and no actual way of healing it back, it makes the Storm School really tough to play unless you know what you're doing. They're still really good at PvE, with the exception of a few of the final bosses that you see in the game. I'll talk a little bit more about them, but because they are Storm based bosses, it makes it really hard for the Storm School to immediately hit them. So in the end game, they aren't exactly superior. And there's another school that I would recommend over Storm when you get to about level 120. So I would put Storm right here next to Life and say that they're like the equal but opposite to the Life School in being able to do what it is that they're supposed to do. The next school I'm going to talk about is Death. The Death School is pretty interesting. A lot of their hits are able to regain health, and that makes them really good on their own. The farther you get into the game, the more you see the Death School becoming a supporter, kind of like the Life School, except they have a little bit less of a choice. So, I mean, I still do see some Death hitters, but you will more than likely see them running as a Jade and a supporter using their utility spells, which includes Bad Juju, their Plague spells, Dark Pact, Like, don't get me wrong, they have some of the best utility spells in the game, and that's why I think they're actually more useful than a lot of people give them credit for, because even though they're not exactly the best hitters, they're the best at being able to make the boss fights run smoothly. Because even though life is good at healing, death is good at suppressing the opponent. I would just say universally, the dev school doesn't get good until later on in the game, unlike life school. Life is pretty good universally. So because of that, I'm going to put death right here below life at the B rank. Doing pretty good, but maybe just not the best school. The next school I'm going to talk about is Myth. Myth is an interesting school in the sense that they gave Myth the luxury of minion use. When minions are used in the right way, they're really good. The only problem is you don't really use minions in PvE because most of the bosses will kill your minions and it's just not worth sacrificing the pips. But in PvP, you see a lot of really good myth wizards at the lower levels. They just don't get pampered with really good AoE hits. But they do get really good spells for PvP at the higher levels, like Medusa, Orpheus, Minotaur. The only problem is it takes a little bit more skill to play as a myth than it does with other schools. For that, I'm going to put myth in the C rank. You know, they're passing, but I would not recommend myth as your first wizard. I'll say it like that. The next school we're going to talk about is fire, and I fell in love with a fire. I'm not gonna lie, a fire stole my heart one day, and personally, the fire school was the first school that I got PvP commander on, and that was really exciting for me. And that's because fire is really good regardless of its level for PvP. It gets really good spells like Krampus, it gets Burning Rampage, and it gets Brim, and all of them utilize really good parts of the fire school. They get really good minions at the low level. They get really good spells later on in the game, including but not limited to Ifrit, FFA. King Art is pretty good for the Fire School. There's several spells for the Fire School that are actually really good, and that's not even including like the OG spells like Fire Elf. It can do a lot of damage because Fire, just like Storm, is very capable of dealing out damage. And this is what I think puts Fire above Storm at this current level. So before I go farther into my explanations, we're going to put Fire where it rightfully belongs in the S rank. And the reason that I say that is because earlier I was talking about how Storm was taken over by another school because of these end of the game bosses that are just harder for the Storm school to hit on. Fire, on the other hand, is really good at hitting some of these end game bosses. If I had to put any of them in the absolute highest list, I would put Fire as being the best school in the game right now because even at low levels, they get their AoE hits early. They're able to use blades. They have a high amount of damage on a normal occasion. They're just really good schools to quest with. They're really good at PvP, and they're really good as a team member in the harder dungeons later on in the game. The next school that I would put right after the fire school is the ice school. And the reason that I say the ice school is because they are also capable of getting AoEs early in the game. They're able to deal damage pretty well. They aren't as powerful as a fire and storm school, but they are really good at tanking hits and having a high amount of health, making them really hard to kill. And they have pretty good damage for how much resistance they can keep at the same time. So that makes them really good at PvP because they have spells like Abominable, they have Clima, they have Winter Moon, they have a lot of really good stun spells. With the exception of the Death School, I think Ice is one of the only schools that you really see running that tank healing support that isn't either life or death. The life and death school are a little bit more oriented towards that support style. I don't even feel like Ice was ever made to be like that, but it just is capable of doing it. That makes Ice one of the best schools, and because it's so good in PvP and because it's also pretty versatile, I would put it up in the S rank. That leaves us with the balance school. Earlier I was joking about it being in the D rank, and I'm not going to lie, it deserves to be in the D rank. We're just going to put it there immediately because here's the thing. The balance school is not good at PvE. It's not. Like any person that says that balance is a good school for PvE is a liar. Like they're just not good. Like there's several reasons why, but One of the first and obvious ones is, unlike every other school on this list, Balance does not have a prism. So that means if they're facing a Balance boss, they struggle. Another disadvantage to the Balance school for PvE is that the only blades they can use are the Balance blades. Unlike the other schools can use their school-based blades, but then they can also use the Balance blade since they're like a universal blade. The Balance school doesn't have that ability, which means even at the maximum amount of damage and the maximum amount of buffs, they come out shorter with the amount of blades they can stack. So that makes them not very good as a hitter school. I've never once seen a Balance run as a hitter school. They are not the main hitters. If anything, they're going to support and just give the hitter school the blades that they have learned. Now, I know that a lot of you are thinking about PvP. And of course, I mean, they have spells like Lore Master. They have their Aura Pop. They have all sorts of really good utility spells. But here's the thing: you don't get any of those spells until later in the game, unless you're gonna level up one of your wizards up to like level 75 or higher. You're not gonna get any of these spells that are good. You're gonna have to suffer from level 1 to level 85 in questing just to get these really good spells. And then you have to be a PvP player because Balance is not the school that you would want on a daily basis in your boss fights. Like, I apologize to the Balance schools. The only thing King's Out gave the Balance school really was the ability to be good at PvP, which means that if you aren't going to do PvP, there is no reason to play as a Balance wizard. Absolutely zero reason to play as a Balance. If I were to tell somebody that was brand new to the game what school they should pick, I would say they should either do Fire, Ice, Life, or Storm, and maybe Death. But I would never recommend them doing Balance. Balance would be the last school I would recommend anyone playing as for their first time for the game. Sure, you can play it later on, and I have a Balance wizard too. I actually have one of every school for my wizards. So I understand the struggle of trying to solo quests on my Balance, and it's awful. All of these other schools are capable of playing solo. If your soloing has a Balance, it's like you're asking for a challenge. Because of that, I would put them in the D rank. If you aren't doing PvP, don't play as a Balance. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I should be coming back into the country soon. I don't know, it depends. I don't know when I'm going to schedule this video. It's going to be sometime while I'm gone in Italy, so I'm really sorry if I sounded sick, because I am. But let me know what you think of my list and what you would change and what your personal experience is. What do you think is the best school for Wizard101? I'd like to know. Thanks again for coming in, and I will talk to you guys later.